Tonight on Reporting Scotland, the former Scottish Government Minister Mark McDonald resigns from the SNP after an investigation finds he acted inappropriately towards women. As the snow continues to cause travel disruption, we speak to the community that's been trapped for nearly a week.
It's been pretty tough. The problem was always the drifting. You know, the guys could get through, but it just filled up right at the back of them, you know, so we've all been pretty much stuck.
Also in the programme, the problems of investigating so-called revenge porn. Fewer than 40% of cases are passed to prosecutors.
A mouse took a stroll through the deep, dark woods.
Helping children to improve their reading and writing. The Renfrewshire school that's won a major literacy award. And keeping in sync, the Edinburgh diver who's teaming up again with the world champion Tom Daley ahead of the Commonwealth Games. Good evening. An independent investigation for the SNP says the former childcare minister, Mark McDonald, acted inappropriately towards women and exploited his position of power. But a defiant Mr McDonald has resigned from the SNP and says he'll be back at Holyrood next week as an independent. He stood down from his ministerial job in November when the allegations emerged. Tonight, the First Minister is calling on Mr McDonald to stand down. Rebecca Curran reports.
He's been absent from Holyrood since November amid allegations of inappropriate behaviour concerning two women.
Good afternoon, everyone.
But today, one day after hearing the findings of an independent investigation, a statement about his future.
I have today emailed the National Secretary of the SNP and the Chief Whip of the Parliamentary Group to advise of my immediate resignation from the party. I have further advised the parliamentary authorities that I will return to Holyrood next week to sit as an independent MSP and have asked them to make the necessary arrangements to allow this to happen.
Mark, are you going to be allowed to stay as an SNP member?
No questions answered as he left via the hotel kitchen. No comment either from former SNP colleagues at Holyrood.
Gilly Martin, do you have any reaction to Mark McDonald's resignation from the SNP?
No, I don't.
Jenny Griffith, what do you think of Mark McDonald's resignation from the SNP?
The First Minister is now calling for him to quit as an MSP.
Of course, the SNP cannot force Mark McDonald to stand down as an MSP, so it is a matter for him. My view is clear. He was elected as an SNP MSP, and if his behaviour is such that he himself considers that he cannot continue as an SNP MSP, then it would be appropriate to give his constituents the opportunity to elect a new MSP.
The independent investigation concluded that Mark McDonald had been deliberate in his actions, which included inappropriate text messages, unwanted attention and exploitation of power. So what do his constituents in Donside think about him remaining as an MSP?
He should stay on his present post anyway, because he's given one a chance and all that. Yeah.
If everything's been true to if it's been said, then no, he shouldn't be.
I definitely don't think he should stay on as an MSP. I know he's resigned from the SNP, but I think his position would be untenable now that he's admitted to the accusations.
Now there are calls for more clarity.
I would like to see the report. I would like to see the outcomes of that report. And if he feels he is not a good enough person to serve as a minister or as an SNP MSP, then I think he really needs to seriously consider whether he's a good enough person to be serving his constituents in this Parliament.
Well, obviously this is about a matter for his conscience. I think what's worrying is he's resigning from the SNP, which suggests there's a problem, but none of us know what it is.
Mark McDonald says he accepts his behaviour fell below the level of professionalism and has issued an unreserved apology for the hurt he caused. Rebecca Curran, Reporting Scotland.
Well, our political correspondent Andrew Chalmers joins me from Holyrood. Andrew, how much pressure is there on Mark McDonald given the First Minister's comments?
Jackie, Mark McDonald spent his professional life working for the SNP. He served as a government minister, and now that's the leader of his former party saying he should essentially quit and give the people of Aberdeen Donside a choice. I think that really does hugely increase the pressure on him. He had really gone before he was pushed. He was going to be disciplined by the SNP group here tomorrow at Holyrood, and he decided to quit before that actually happened. Now, of course, Mark McDonald is hoping to keep coming back to this place, keep earning his salary, but I think given the comments that Nicola Sturgeon made today, that could perhaps fuel any possible local campaign to unseat him. And now constituents don't have any rights when it comes to that, but more and more in politics we do hear about people being given the right of recall when it comes to their MP or MSP.
And Andrew, in terms of numbers at Holyrood, where does this leave the SNP?
Well, the SNP will still be sitting pretty in a way. They will still, of course, be able to have that minority government. They'll still be able to run that. But of course, I think Nicola Sturgeon's comments today have really, I suppose, given succour to those who want tough action taken against any inappropriate behaviour. But as one SNP MSP put it to me today, the reason that Mark McDonald has gone, well, they say it suits us.
Thank you very much, Andrew Kerr at Holyrood there. The trial of a former hospital consultant who has admitted possessing a vast quantity of firearms and ammunition has got underway at the High Court in Glasgow. 62-year-old Martin Watt faces a string of firearms charges, including intent to endanger life, which he denies. Katrina Renton reports.
Police Constable Scott MacLeod was one of the officers sent to raid Martin Watt's home. He told the court about the large number of weapons he found stashed in drawers under Dr. Watt's bed in the house where he lived in Cumbernauld. Police found 3 Scorpion submachine guns like these and 2 Valtro self-loading pistols similar to this, as well as over 1,500 live bullets. The court heard Martin Watt had been a consultant doctor at Monklands Hospital in Airdrie.
During the search of the house, Police Constable MacLeod said documents were found relating to Dr. Watt's dismissal from his job at the hospital. He said they also found an envelope. On the front were written the words, "Bad Guys." Inside the envelope were lists of names, addresses and car registrations. After inquiries to NHS Lanarkshire, it emerged that some of these names were linked to the disciplinary process that led to Dr. Watt losing his job.
In the house, they also found post-it notes with car registrations written on them and a laptop which had a history of searches, including how to make gunpowder and how to kill someone.
There's no dispute that Martin Watt was in possession of most of the firearms he's charged with, but he does deny possessing them with the intent of endangering anyone's life. Katrina Renton reporting Scotland at the High Court in Glasgow.
It's been another difficult day for commuters in parts of Scotland after more snow showers. And tonight there are concerns about flooding. Well, some residents in Stirlingshire who've been stuck at home for almost a week managed to leave their houses today for the first time. Andrew Black has more.
Day 7 of bad weather, and this part of central Scotland is still covered in snow.
Well, as the rest of Scotland has been getting back to normal after the snowy weather, as you can see here in the Carron Valley area in Stirlingshire, it's been anything but. The roads are still largely impassable, it is still snowing, and these atrocious conditions look set to continue. People living here have been stuck at home for the best part of a week.
It's been pretty tough. It's a bit better just now. The tractor's just been down with the plough, but the problem was always the drifting. You know, the guys could get through, but it just filled up right at the back of them, you know, so we've all been pretty much stuck since Wednesday, you know.
Elsewhere, it was a difficult commute to work. Progress was slow on the M77 this morning in East Renfrewshire. Despite snow on the tracks, trains in the area were moving. In Midlothian, snow clearing continued, but life was largely returning to normal. This dairy farm in East Lothian, which bottles and delivers its own milk, is also getting back on track. The owners here say it's time to take stock and have a think about how things could be done better the next time.
The independent shops that had the milk, the supermarkets hadn't been able to get deliveries, so they were able to get a direct supply from us, whereas the bigger supermarkets couldn't. So there's maybe a lesson to be learned of some of the supermarkets maybe having backup suppliers, or look at simpler supply chains for some goods like bread and milk, which were the ones that seemed to cause the problem.
There were also calls to learn lessons from the situation last Wednesday when 1,000 vehicles got stuck overnight on the M80. Today, the Conservatives' Margaret Mitchell raised concerns that miscommunication within Police Scotland delayed the response.
Anyone listening to those warnings should have thought twice about going anywhere near the M80, because it's no surprise to any of us that the hills up and down at Castlecarey cause these difficulties during winter. So I assure Margaret Mitchell the police were absolutely all over the incident.
Tonight, concerns have turned towards flooding. In Rosyth and Fife, residents are taking steps to protect their homes. As temperatures rise and snow melts, flood alerts are being put in place. Andrew Black, reporting Scotland.
A 17-year-old girl and a 45-year-old man have been arrested following an incident in a police van in Perth. Stuart Limer and the teenager, both from Staffordshire, had been missing since last Friday. They were located at Perth railway station yesterday morning. They're currently being treated at Ninewells Hospital in Dundee following the incident, which is believed to have involved a bladed weapon. They're expected to appear in court from custody in the coming days. Police have arrested a 15-year-old boy in connection with a suspicious death in Moffat. 17-year-old Callum Lum died in hospital after being found unconscious in a house shortly before 9 o'clock last night. Police remain at the scene and a forensic examination is underway. More than 60% of cases reported to police under a new revenge porn law haven't been passed to prosecutors. And that's according to data obtained by BBC Scotland. Detectives say investigating offences is challenging and have urged victims to contact them promptly to help improve the detection rate. Our Home Affairs correspondent, Rival Alderson, can tell us more.
It's officially known as non-consensual sharing of intimate images and typically involves explicit photos or videos sent via social media without the knowledge of the person pictured. Anne, which isn't her real name, found she was a victim after 15 years of a volatile marriage. Her voice has been disguised.
I found out he was putting images of me on the internet. I received a text from a man I didn't know saying yes, he wanted to have sex with me. And when I asked him who he was, he explained that he was off a swinger site. So it just makes you feel filthy and, I don't know, worthless and so embarrassing. I mean, the police had to look at all these images, and that alone was embarrassing, especially when you're sat there facing them.
This is a new offence. It only came onto the statute book last July. But 225 cases have been reported to police since then. However, of those, only 39% have been detected. That means to say details have been passed to prosecutors for further action. The data obtained by BBC Scotland shows that in 42% of cases, the victims were in their 20s, and that 60% of cases involved a perpetrator who was a partner or an ex-partner. Now, police do say this is an area of complexity for them to investigate, but they are confident that prosecutions will rise.
Really critically important for the police is that the victim comes forward at an early stage, not only so that we can gather evidence in order to support a successful prosecution, but also to provide advice and support to them on how best to minimise the impact on their lives.
Kelly McGurk received a Facebook message from a stranger, including Snapchat screenshots of photos taken by her ex-partner. Like Anne, the pictures were taken when she was asleep. Kelly's waived her right to anonymity in the hope her story will help others.
The more victims that come forward and the more people that's prosecuted, then maybe society will realise that you're not getting away with this and you can't do it to people. So maybe then it will change the way people think about sexual crimes and about sending pictures or anything like that.
Women's charities are now calling on social media companies to be more proactive in assisting police in evidence gathering. Rival Alderson reporting Scotland.
It's almost 16 minutes to 7. A reminder now of tonight's top story. Former Scottish Government Minister Mark McDonald resigns from the SNP as an investigation finds he acted inappropriately towards women. And still to come, the diver who is one of Scotland's biggest medal hopes for this year's Commonwealth Games. The The father of a teenager who died after suffering repeated concussions in a school rugby match said he'd like new guidelines for dealing with the injury to be backed by legislation. 3 years ago, Scotland became the first country in the world to produce a single concussion policy for all grassroots sport. Stephen Godden reports.
As the understanding of concussion has improved, attitudes towards it have changed. The dizziness, confusion, sometimes a loss of consciousness, is now associated with a traumatic brain injury.
When I first had a concussion, it was literally you're told do nothing, do as little as you can, lie in a dark room, it'll make your recovery quicker. But what we as players tended to find out, and why things are starting to change a little bit, is that often made things worse because you're doing nothing, your mind's not stimulated at all.
Today, the emphasis is on rehab rather than rest, a change reflected in updated guidelines on concussion, republished today.
These are the latest iteration of a guideline that actually places in a slightly different kind of focus, and just as I say, if you would rehabilitate a knee injury or a shoulder injury if you'd received it in sport, this is about how we go about trying to rehabilitate a brain injury as a result of concussion.
3 years ago, Peter Robinson was a central figure as Scotland became the first country in the world to produce concussion guidelines. In 2011, his son Ben died after being repeatedly concussed during a school rugby match. He believes today's guidelines would have saved Ben's life. Ultimately, he'd like them backed with legislation, but he's also conscious of the need to strike a balance.
My 3 other children are all sports people, sometimes I doubt what they're doing, but I know the benefits, outweigh the risks, and if it's educated risks, and we know the risks and we manage them, well, then it's a safer playing environment.
When it comes to concussion, sports like rugby attract most of the attention, but these guidelines have been drawn up with all sports in mind. The key message for parents and coaches involved at the grassroots level boils down to a simple slogan: if in doubt, sit them out. Stephen Godden, reporting Scotland.
A man who shot a police officer with a crossbow during a siege at a house in South Lanarkshire has been jailed for 8 years. Christopher Hutchison fired the bolt at his home in Blantyre last October. After a tense standoff, armed officers moved in when he set fire to the house. The 37-year-old will be supervised in the community for a further 4 years after his release. The SNP has joined some other opposition parties at Westminster to call for a meeting with the EU's chief Brexit negotiator, Michel Barnier, to raise their concerns about the process. The decision was taken following talks at Westminster this morning between the SNP, Plaid Cymru, the Lib Dems and the Green Party. Labour refused to join them. Well, David Porter is at Westminster for us this evening. I suppose the question, David, is will this meeting happen?
Jackie, I think you can take it as read that the meeting will happen. To date, Michel Barnier has been operating an open door policy as far as UK politicians and pressure groups are concerned in them wanting to talk about Brexit. Yesterday he was talking to Sinn Féin, today he's been talking to the Democratic Unionist Party in Northern Ireland, and in the next couple of days he will be receiving a visit from the head of the TUC. So I think it would be absolutely extraordinary if 4 Westminster parties, who between them have more than 50 MPs, did not get a meeting. It would be seen as a real snub. Now, what those parties have been saying is that they want to focus with Michel Barnier on the customs union and access to the single market. As far as the SNP leader at Westminster, Ian Blackford, is concerned, he wants to talk about the transition period, or the so-called implementation period. This is the period of time when we leave the EU next year, before we actually completely go, where transition arrangements are made to try and help various sectors. He believes that the transition period, which could end in 2020, should be extended. He said that would help Scottish firms and the Scottish economy in the longer run.
We don't know the timescales of what is happening in terms of negotiations and the agreement that has to be reached between the UK and the EU. And specifically, one of the things that I want to see, that our interests are protected in the short term through the transition deal. We know the transition deal is going to effectively keep us attached to the single market and the customs union to the end of 2020. Let's have a discussion about whether we could extend that beyond that date. And the reason that we need to do that, because it is about protecting the living standards, it is about protecting prosperity, and it is about protecting
Now,
jobs.
tonight that letter is actually on its way to Michel Barnier because it involves 4 political parties here at Westminster and the European Commission. It will be a little bit challenging to coordinate dates and diaries, but certainly as far as the parties are concerned here at Westminster, they want their views on Brexit to be heard loud and clear in Brussels.
Thank you very much, David. And staying at Westminster, RBS says its chief executive will give evidence to the Scottish Affairs Committee after MPs threatened to formally summon him. They want to quiz Ross McEwan on plans to close branches across Scotland. In a letter, the committee's chair, Pete Wishart, said Mr McEwan had not engaged meaningfully in attempts to organise a hearing. But the BBC has been told this evening that Mr McEwan will appear, with a date to be confirmed soon. A Renfrewshire school has won a prestigious award for its pioneering work helping children with their reading and writing. St Anthony's Primary has been named UK Literacy School of the Year. It's the first time the prize has gone to a Scottish school. Here's our education correspondent, Jamie McIver.
Oh no, it's there!
Today was School Prize Day at St Anthony's, but this time the prize was for the school.
This really is an award for us as a community.
The imaginative and creative work here has helped more children learn to read and write well, including some from disadvantaged areas.
Basically what we've done is just bring pleasure back into reading and just give children lots and lots of experience of different authors, different types of genre, just to open up the world for them. For some of our children, reading is not something that happens at home, they're not comfortable there, they've not got a lot of experience, but it's about us breaking down those barriers.
A mouse took a stroll through the deep dark woods. A fox saw the mouse and the mouse looked good.
6-year-old Olivia simply loves to read.
You get to see all the fun and colourful and exciting pictures, and you get to read all these long words and all the exciting words in a book.
Making reading fun even means the words to the school song are read off a big screen. There was much here which impressed the judges.
It is how much everything that the teachers do. It is their enthusiasm, it's the children's enthusiasm, it's their ability to discuss books, literature.
The Scottish Government wants to raise attainment in schools and help more children from disadvantaged areas do better. It's a big challenge, and nationally, progress in literacy has often been disappointing. But perhaps the last word should go to Olivia. When you see a word you haven't seen before, what do?
You sound it out and then you try and spell it. And if you can't get it, you'll ask for help.
Jamie McIver, reporting Scotland.
Me too, Olivia. Now, Grace Reid is Scotland's best chance of a diving medal at next month's Commonwealth Games in Australia. The 21-year-old has just joined the training group of the world champion Tom Daley, leaving behind her home, university and training base in Edinburgh. Rona McLeod has been to meet her at London's Olympic Park.
A completely new training setup hundreds of miles from home. But I find Grace Reid not in the pool, but playing table tennis.
Okay, right, ready?
It's not their sport, but pre-training table tennis is a serious business.
Grace is so much fun. We get on really well, and it's also just nice to have someone to train with that feels the same way about training, feels that has the same positive attitude, likes to have fun, and in competition we just bounce off of each other, so she's an awesome synchro partner.
Here they are, Tom Daley, Grace Reid.
Oh, nice moves, guys. Their chemistry is clear to see, and their synchro partnership has achieved world silver and European gold medals. For Reid, the difficult decision to move south is paying off.
Yes!
I think down here, not having the university allows me to put in a lot more time and energy into just diving. And to train in the London Olympic pool is just fantastic. You know, the facilities are second to none.
Here's the difference, that we're not in this position anymore, and our knees are not bent.
And you know, to be coached by Jane, who's got just a world of experience, it's just fantastic, and it's a joy to come to training every day.
Grace is one of these people that comes into a program and changes dynamic immediately, and Tom and her obviously have an amazing relationship. We're just overwhelmingly happy and just very proud of her, and we're just going to do our best to make sure that she gets where she wants to go.
But the journey will be a tough one as Reid prepares to compete in the individual springboard events for Team Scotland at the Gold Coast.
5 out of the top 8 girls in the world are in the Commonwealth, so it's going to be a battle for those medals, I'm sure.
I'm definitely going to be cheering Team Scotland in the women's 3 metre for Grace because, you know, she's one of my best mates. If she just holds her own and dives like I know she can definitely make it up on the podium.
Daly for Team England and Reid for Team Scotland, perfecting for the podium. The Gold Coast opening ceremony is now less than a month away. Rona McLeod, reporting Scotland.
Now let's get the weather from Christopher. And you know what returned?
Certainly did, Jackie. Thank you very much indeed. Hello there, good evening to you. For many of us, the snow is well and truly on its way out, but for some, these were the conditions they had to deal with this morning. For others, some sleet, and the thaw continues with some flooding. This is the radar. You can see this area of rain and snow edging its way northwards across the country today. And the heaviest pulses brought the snow down to fairly low levels, certainly across central Scotland this morning. But tonight it's moving its way northwards. Still a spell of heavy snow through parts of Caithness and Sutherland. And then some rain from Lerwick down towards the West Nile, showers in the west. Elsewhere dry, some clear periods and temperatures around about freezing. So some ice at times and some mist and fog. But tomorrow, actually, probably a much better day than today for most of us. Yes, we still have this band of cloud and rain across parts of the far north and northwest, a number of showers across western parts of the country, but elsewhere reasonably dry with some brightness at times. Low pressure firmly in charge, though, so that means we could see a shower almost anywhere. The bulk of them likely to be had across parts of the west coast and the Inner Hebrides, but inland 1 or 2 times. 1 or 2 rain showers, 1 or 2 sleet or snow showers given any elevation, and some sunshine certainly across parts of the Murray Coast, northern Aberdeenshire, Caithness, southern parts of Orkney, and temperatures picking up 5-6 Celsius. That will aid the thawing of any lying snow and perhaps some further issues with flooding. Rest of the afternoon into the evening and overnight, little in the way of change really. Still a number of showers towards the west coast, some dry, clear conditions elsewhere, and quite a chilly night. Looking ahead towards Thursday, low pressure still with us sitting overhead. You can see the widely spaced isobars there, so very little in the way of wind. Still a number of showers towards the west coast. If you catch one, it could be slow moving. The further east that you are, the drier and brighter it will be, and temperatures again 5 or 6 Celsius. Looking ahead towards Friday, well, we could be up to 7 degrees, but a number of showers in the northwest, and these will be wintry across the hills. That's the forecast for now.
Thank you very much, Christopher. And now just time for tonight's main news once again. The former Scottish Government Minister, Mark McDonald, resigns from the SNP as an investigation finds he acted inappropriately towards women. Mr McDonald plans to return to Holyrood as an independent. The First Minister has called for him to stand down from his constituency. And that's Reporting Scotland. Our next main bulletin is just after the 10 o'clock news. And don't forget, you can get all the up-to-date weather forecasts online. Until then, from all the team, good evening.